Hey guys, it's Martin Rooney from trainingforwarriors.com, and hey, we got a great question, one that got me excited on here on Fight Camp Conditioning, and that question was, hey, how do you know when somebody's ready to fight? And in particular, they said, well, right now they have the NFL combines and they test for certain things to kind of predict who's ready to play in the NFL. They have NBA combines to predict maybe who is going to be in the NBA. They've got NHL combines and they're doing it for almost every sport. But what about fighting? So what about fighting? What do I think? Are there stats like, hey, does somebody have to squat double their body weight? Does somebody have to be a certain strength? How does it work? And on the surface, the question I think is pretty interesting, but then there's so much more detail in it. So I'm going to do my best to answer it, but man, there's so much that maybe goes into it. So the first thing overall for everybody to remember out there, if you're training fighters or you are a fighter, hey, strength will never fail you. Like the stronger you are, the faster you are, the more endurance you have, those are all going to be assets, biomotor characteristics and assets that can improve you as a fighter. So for instance, if you have an identical twin and he's twice as weak as you and you're both fighters, that's probably going to give you a little bit of advantage. But there's more than that. See, NFL Combine, which I prepared a lot of people for, yes, they're looking for how fast and strong you are, but they are also really testing you technically, and they want to see what kind of player you are as well. So strength and speed are a predictor of maybe the level you could play at, but you got to still be technical. In mixed martial arts or in MMA or other combat arts, technique, man, there's an interesting thing that happens in technique. See, technically, the goal of many martial arts is that you can become so technical that you don't have to be as strong as the other guy and you can be successful. And when you really look at the purity of technique in martial arts, when it reaches the highest levels of some of the people that are the best of the world, it's almost like sometimes they don't need all the physical characteristics and their art is so pure it can win. Now, I am not saying, hey, you don't need to be strong and only be technical, but what I am saying is that technique throws a monkey wrench in there when it comes into MMA. So if MMA only went to the strongest, fastest guy, then technique wouldn't really be needed so much and just be super powerhouses. So there's this combination of both. So what have we said so far, just to be clear here, because sometimes I confuse myself. Hey, strength, speed, endurance, you got to have it and you want to develop it. But you cannot forget that technically you also want to be at the highest levels in the world. And if you are one of the highest levels in the world, then you don't need to be the strongest guy. Now, speaking of that, the strongest guy, hey, some of the guys that I've worked with over the years, Frankie Edgar, Jim Miller. Hey, Jim Miller had a 508-pound deadlift recently. And wow, you might say, wow, that's incredibly strong. Hey, do you want to go for 550 or 560? Now, Jim did, but you know what? That was enough. See, I would also say that there becomes a limit to how strong you need to be. See, in mixed martial arts or any sport, there becomes a limit of how much strength you can really utilize in the small amounts of time. So what I will also caution everybody is, hey, oh, do I want to have triple bodyweight deadlift or double bodyweight squat? Hey, remember, guys, powerlifting and certain lifts, if you're trying to prepare a mixed martial artist, you know, they're not the same thing. So it's great to have people become strong, but there's probably going to be a limit where the risk and reward isn't worth it. So to try to go for a 600-pound deadlift and you hurt yourself and now you can't fight, that probably wasn't the best thing in the world to do. But to never deadlift because you want to make sure you never get hurt, that's probably not the best idea either. So I wish I had the answer or values or variables, and I don't, but what I do have is something called our Warrior Challenges. So in some of the books that I've produced, one in particular, Ultimate Warrior Workouts, we produce challenges, different relative body strength tests, and then some of the tests using exercises like chin-ups and bench press, dips, where we tried to find values that people could perform for their body weight, which is what mixed martial arts is all about. And according to how people, some of our highest scorers ever, hey, Frankie Edgar was one of those highest scorers. We've got a silver medalist from the Olympics, and Greco that was one of the highest scores. So it's interesting that some of the highest scores we've ever had in those tests, they also reached some of the highest levels. So to conclude, because I know I was hitting a lot of stuff, and hopefully this stimulates even more discussion. You got to be strong, got to be fast, you got to have it all. But you cannot forget about technique. And sometimes when the technique becomes so incredible, maybe you don't have to be completely as strong as the other guy and you could still be victorious. But ultimately, you want to be strong for your weight. You want to be able to perform really well. But remember the concept that I talked about risk reward. Going for too much just to go for the sake of doing so much weight, eventually there will be diminishing returns on that and the risk of injury increases. So that is my take on it. Do I think they're going to come up with a combine for UFC? Probably not anytime soon. But what I will say is, hey, never give up on being stronger and faster, but also never give up on working your technique. And when you find the ultimate combination of both, that is where we're going to find the ultimate fighter.